The Galactic auction house of Zephyr 9 stood like a massive crystal dome against the purple sky. Inside, thousands of alien species gathered for the monthly salvage auction. The air buzzed with different languages, clicks, and hums as buyers examined the lots. In the darkest corner of the warehouse, covered in dust and grime, sat lot number 4721. The auctioneer's assistant, a six-armed Krellin named Vex, kicked it with disgust. "Another piece of junk," he muttered. "Don't know why we even bother cataloging these ancient relics." The object looked like a twisted mass of metal and crystal, about the size of a small spacecraft. Its surface was scarred with burn marks and what appeared to be weapon damage. Strange symbols covered parts of its hull, but they were too faded to read. Most buyers walked past without a second glance. Marcus Chen adjusted his worn mechanic's coveralls as he entered the auction house. He was one of only 3 humans in the entire building. Humans were still new to the galactic community, having only made first contact 50 years ago. Most aliens viewed them as primitive creatures who had barely mastered faster-than-light travel. Marcus wasn't here for the fancy stuff. He owned a small repair shop on the human colony of New Brisbane, and he needed cheap parts. The salvage auction was perfect for someone like him. While rich aliens bid on pristine technology, Marcus could usually grab the damaged goods for almost nothing. He wandered through the lots, his trained eye scanning for useful components. That's when he saw it. Lot 4121. Something about it made him stop. While other buyers saw junk, Marcus saw potential. The way the metal was folded, the crystal formations, the careful placement of what looked like exhaust ports. This wasn't random damage. This was design. "Find something interesting, human?" A Yorbian merchant slithered up beside him. Yorbians looked like giant slugs with expensive taste. This one wore jeweled bands around its body. "Just browsing," Marcus said carefully. He'd learned not to show too much interest in anything. Prices had a way of going up when sellers thought humans wanted something. The Yorbian laughed, a wet, burbling sound. "That thing? It's been through 12 auctions. Nobody wants it. The scanning teams couldn't even figure out what it is. Probably just space debris fused together by a solar storm." Marcus nodded and moved on, but his mind kept returning to the object. When the auction started, he found a seat in the back. The expensive lots went first. A pristine Altarian pleasure yacht sold for 2 million credits. A set of Vulcan military drones went for 5 million. Marcus watched and waited. Hours passed. The crowd thinned as buyers collected their purchases and left. Finally, the auctioneer, a bored-looking Zentran with scales that changed color with his mood, reached the bottom of the list. "Lot 4721, he announced without enthusiasm. "Unknown salvage. No identified components. Starting bid at 50 credits. Silence filled the hall. The auctioneer's scales shifted to an irritated orange. 40 credits? Still nothing. 20 credits? Anyone? Marcus raised his hand. 20 credits. The auctioneer looked surprised that anyone bid at all. 20 credits to the human in the back. Going once. Going twice. 25 credits. The voice came from a Heck trader near the front. Hecks were scavengers who would buy anything if the price was low enough. Marcus sighed. He had only brought 300 credits. 30 credits. 35, the Heck countered. 50 credits, Marcus said, hoping to end it quickly. The Heck turned to look at him, its 4 eyes narrowing. Then it laughed. The human can have it. 50 credits is too much for scrap. Sold to the human for 50 credits, the auctioneer said quickly, his scales turning a pleased green. 1 less piece of junk to store. Marcus completed the payment and arranged for delivery to his shop. The other buyers smirked as he passed. Humans will buy anything, he heard someone whisper. 3 days later, the object arrived at his repair shop on New Brisbane. The delivery crew, two surly Rogathans, dumped it in his backlot and left without a word. Marcus stood in the fading sunlight, studying his purchase. Up close, it was even more intriguing. The metal wasn't any alloy in the Galactic database. When he ran his hand over it, it felt warm, almost alive. The crystals embedded in the surface caught the light in strange ways, creating patterns that seemed to shift and move. Marcus got to work. He started with a basic structural scan, but his equipment couldn't penetrate the outer shell. He tried sonic mapping, electromagnetic resonance, even an old-fashioned hammer tap test. Nothing worked. The object absorbed every scan, every probe, every attempt to understand it. Days turned into weeks. Marcus became obsessed. He neglected his regular repair work, spending every free moment with the object. His girlfriend, Sarah, stopped by one evening to find him asleep against it, diagnostic tools scattered around him. "Mark, you need to take a break," she said, shaking him awake. "You've lost weight. When's the last time you ate a real meal?" He rubbed his eyes. "I'm close to something, Sarah. I can feel it." She looked at the object with distaste. "It's just a hunk of metal. You wasted 50 credits on garbage." But Marcus couldn't let it go. Something deep in his brain, some instinct evolved over millions of years, told him this was important. He started approaching the problem differently. Instead of trying to force his way in, he began to listen. He placed sensitive microphones against the surface and recorded for hours. He measured micro vibrations. He even tried talking to it, feeling slightly foolish. One night, working alone in his shop, Marcus discovered something odd. When he placed his bare hand on a specific spot on the object's surface, he felt a slight tingle. Not painful, just a gentle vibration that seemed to match his heartbeat. He held his hand there, and the sensation grew stronger. The crystals began to glow, faintly at first, then brighter. Marcus didn't move. The symbols on the surface started to shift, rearranging themselves into new patterns. His translator implant, designed to interpret known galactic languages, suddenly sparked to life. "Emergency Protocol 77 Alpha activated," a voice said directly into his mind. Not through his ears, but somehow inside his consciousness. Biological signature recognized. Species classification: human. Authorization granted. Marcus jerked back, his heart racing. The glow faded and the object returned to its dormant state. He stood there, breathing hard, trying to process what just happened. Whatever this thing was, it recognized him. It recognized humanity. He reached out again, placing his hand on the same spot. This time he was ready for the sensation. The voice returned, clearer now. "System diagnostic in progress. Warning: primary systems offline. Secondary systems offline. Tertiary systems at 12% capacity. Hull breach detected in sections Alpha through Gamma. Life support non-functional. Weapon systems non-functional. Navigation offline. Power core stable but disconnected. Would you like to proceed with emergency repairs?" "Yes," Marcus whispered. The object shuddered. Seams appeared in what he had thought was solid metal. With a hiss of ancient atmosphere, a section of the hull swung open, revealing an interior that defied every law of physics Marcus knew. The space inside was impossibly large. Where the object's exterior was maybe 10 meters across, the interior stretched for what looked like hundreds of meters. Corridors led off in multiple directions. The walls were covered in the same shifting symbols, but now they pulsed with urgent red light. Marcus stepped inside, his mechanic's instincts overriding his fear. The corridor felt familiar somehow, as if it had been designed for someone just his size. The ceiling height was perfect. The floor had a subtle texture that gripped his boots without impeding movement. He followed the red lights, which seemed to be leading him somewhere specific. The corridors twisted and turned, but Marcus never felt lost. Something in the layout made sense to his human brain in a way he couldn't explain. Finally, he reached what had to be the control room, Banks of dead screens surrounded a central chair. Crystal formations grew from the ceiling like frozen waterfalls. In the center of the room, a pillar of pure energy flickered weakly. "Power core detected," the voice said. "Manual reconnection required. Place your hand on the primary interface." Marcus saw a hand-shaped indent on the pillar. It looked exactly like a human hand. He pressed his palm against it, and the world exploded into light. Information flooded his mind. Not words or images, but pure knowledge. He understood suddenly what this object was. It wasn't debris or salvage. It was a ship, a very special ship, built by a race called the Architects, who had vanished from the galaxy millions of years ago. The Architects had been masters of technology beyond anything the current galactic civilizations could imagine. They had built their ships to last forever, to repair themselves, to adapt and grow. But they had also built them with a very specific key. The ships would only respond to a species that met certain criteria. A species with the right kind of curiosity, the right problem-solving abilities, the right biological markers. Humanity, it turned out, was an almost perfect match. The power core hummed to life, sending energy flowing through long-dead systems. Lights flickered on throughout the ship. Screens activated, showing diagnostic data in symbols that Marcus somehow understood. The ship was healing itself, using his biological pattern as a template to reconstruct damaged systems. But it was slow. The damage was extensive. Combat damage, Marcus realized. This ship had been in a terrible battle. Someone or something had tried very hard to destroy it. But Architect technology was nearly indestructible. It had survived, drifting through space for eons, waiting for the right hands to wake it up. Marcus spent the rest of the night exploring. He found crew quarters sized for beings roughly human-shaped. He found a medical bay with technology that could probably cure any disease. He found an engine room with drives that used principles of physics humanity hadn't even discovered yet. And he found the weapon systems. Even damaged and offline, they were terrifying. This wasn't just a ship. It was a warship. As dawn light filtered through his shop windows, Marcus emerged from the ship, exhausted but exhilarated. He had work to do. The ship needed repairs, and while it could heal itself given time, it would go faster with help. He needed parts, materials, and most importantly, he needed to keep this secret. The galactic community viewed humans as backward primitives. What would they do if they discovered humanity could activate Architect technology? Marcus thought about the weapon systems he'd seen. In the wrong hands, this ship could destabilize the entire galaxy. He closed the hull section and stepped back. To any observer, it still looked like worthless scrap. That was good. That gave him time. Time to repair it, to understand it, to figure out what to do with the most powerful discovery in human history. As he walked to his office to catch a few hours of sleep, Marcus couldn't help but smile. Everyone at the auction had thought he was a fool for buying worthless junk. If only they knew. But they would find out eventually. When humanity took its real place in the galaxy, when they proved they weren't primitive newcomers but the inheritors of the Architect's legacy, everyone would know. The worthless scrap from Lot 4721 would change everything. Marcus Chen hadn't slept properly in 2 weeks. Every moment not spent on paying repair jobs was dedicated to the Architect ship. He'd told Sarah he was working on a big project, which wasn't exactly a lie. He just left out the part about it being possibly the most important discovery in human history. The ship was teaching him. Every time he placed his hand on the interface, new knowledge flowed into his mind. Not overwhelming anymore, but steady, like learning a new language through immersion. He understood now that the ship had been named Starforge by its original creators, though the actual Architect word was a complex harmony of meanings that human language couldn't quite capture. Working inside Starforge was like being in a living organism. The walls responded to his touch, opening panels, and revealing systems as he needed them. The ship seemed to anticipate his needs, guiding him to damaged sections with gentle pulses of light. The first major repair came in the navigation system. Marcus found the damaged components in what the ship identified as Astrogation Center 3. The primary and secondary centers were completely destroyed, but the tertiary backup had only suffered moderate damage. The technology was unlike anything in the Galactic database. Where most species used computers based on binary logic or quantum uncertainty, the architects had built something else entirely. Their navigation system worked by creating tiny pocket universes, running simulations of possible routes millions of times per second, and selecting the optimal path through space-time. Marcus stared at the damaged component. It looked like a sphere of impossible geometry, surfaces that folded in on themselves, existing in more dimensions than his eyes could process. How was he supposed to fix something that violated the laws of physics just by existing? Repair protocol available, Starforge whispered in his mind. Required materials, refined palladium, crystallized xenon, and temporal stabilization matrix. Marcus had palladium in his shop. Crystallized xenon he could synthesize with some effort. But a temporal stabilization matrix? He didn't even know what that was. Alternative available, the ship continued. Human neural pattern can substitute for temporal stabilization matrix with 67% efficiency. What does that mean? Marcus asked aloud. He'd gotten used to talking to the ship. Your species possesses unique neural architecture. Quantum consciousness creates natural temporal stabilization field. Direct interface will allow navigation system function at reduced capacity until proper repairs can be implemented. Marcus considered this. The ship was asking him to directly interface his brain with its navigation system. It sounded dangerous. It probably was dangerous. But then again, everything about this was dangerous. What do I need to do? A chair rose from the floor in the center of the room. It looked disturbingly medical, with neural interface points that would connect to his skull. Marcus had seen similar devices in high-end medical facilities, but this was far more advanced. He sat down. The chair adjusted automatically to his body, supporting him perfectly. Interface filaments, thin as hair and soft as silk, extended from the headrest and touched specific points on his skull. There was no pain, just a strange sensation of expansion. Suddenly, Marcus could see everything, not just the room around him, but the entire ship. He felt its wounds like they were his own. He sensed the dead sections where violent energy had torn through armor and shields. He experienced the echo of its last battle, fought millions of years ago against an enemy whose very existence had been erased from history. But more than that, he could see paths, lines of possibility stretching out from the ship's current position. He could trace routes through space that hadn't been charted yet, could sense the gravitational songs of distant stars, could feel the pulse of galaxies turning in their eternal dance. The navigation system sparked to life, drawing power through his consciousness. It wasn't fully repaired, but it was functional. Marcus carefully disconnected, his head spinning with residual sensation. Navigation system online at 67% capacity, Starforge reported, calculating optimal repair sequence for remaining systems. Over the following days, Marcus developed a routine. He'd work on paying jobs during business hours, maintaining the facade of normalcy. Then, after closing, he'd enter Starforge and continue repairs. The ship guided him to each system in order of priority. Life support came next. The air recycling system used biological filters that were actually living creatures, microscopic organisms that had been engineered by the architects. They were all dead, had been for millions of years. But Marcus discovered that Earth algae, with some genetic modifications he could perform using Starforge's medical bay, could serve as a replacement. It took him 3 days to grow enough modified algae to restart the life support. When he activated the system, the ship's interior air became crisp and clean with a subtle scent like ozone after a thunderstorm. For the first time, Marcus could remove his portable oxygen supply while working in the deeper sections. The power distribution network proved more challenging. Architect technology used something they called phase-shifted energy that existed partially in another dimension. Regular matter couldn't conduct it properly. Marcus had to synthesize special materials using Starforge's fabrication bay, feeding it raw elements and watching in fascination as it assembled them at the molecular level. One evening, while Marcus was deep in the engineering section trying to repair a power coupling, he heard voices outside his shop. He froze. Through Starforge's still-functioning sensors, he could see 3 figures examining his building. 2 were Krell enforcers, thick-bodied aliens who often worked as muscle for hire. The 3rd was the Yorbian merchant from the auction, the one who had mocked him for showing interest in the worthless scrap. "This is the place," the Yorbian said, his translator rendering his burbling speech into standard. "The human Chen works here. My sources say he hasn't been taking many repair jobs lately. He's been spending all his time with that salvage he bought." "So?" one of the Krell grunted. "Humans are weird. They like broken things. Perhaps, but I've been thinking, why would a human spend 50 credits on something that's been through 12 auctions without selling? What if he saw something others missed?" Marcus held his breath. He'd been careless. Of course someone would notice his changed behavior. In the close-knit community of New Brisbane, gossip traveled fast. The Yorbian slithered closer to the shop's back entrance. "I want to see what he's doing with it." "Boss, breaking into a human shop is illegal," the second Krell said nervously. "Colonial security doesn't mess around." "We're not breaking in. We're just investigating. I have a key." The Yorbian produced a universal lock breaker, illegal on every civilized world. Marcus thought quickly. He couldn't let them discover Starforge, but he also couldn't suddenly appear outside without raising suspicion. He was supposed to be gone for the evening. "Starforge," he whispered. "Can you help?" "Defense protocols available. Non-lethal options recommended to avoid attention." "Do it." As the Yorbian's lockbreaker touched the door, every electronic device within 50 meters suddenly failed. The lights went out. The Yorbian's translator sputtered and died. Even the Krell's weapons, plasma rifles that should have been hardened against interference, went dark. "What in the 7 hells?" the Yorbian squealed in his native language, which now sounded like angry bubbling without the translator. The Krell, spooked by the sudden darkness and the failure of their equipment, decided they'd had enough. They grabbed the protesting Yorbian and dragged him away. Marcus watched through Starforge's sensors as they fled, probably to find somewhere to repair their mysteriously damaged gear. "Thanks," Marcus said to the ship. "Threat neutralized. Recommend increased security measures. This unit can extend defensive grid to cover entire structure." Marcus agreed. From that night on, Starforge maintained a subtle defensive field around the shop. Nothing obvious, just enough to discourage unwanted visitors and make electronic surveillance fail at convenient moments. The repairs continued. Week by week, system by system, Starforge came back to life. The medical bay was fully functional now, its scanners revealing technology that could repair genetic damage, regrow limbs, even reverse aging. The fabrication systems could build almost anything if given the right raw materials. The computer core, once Marcus figured out how to interface with it properly, contained libraries of knowledge that would advance human science by centuries. But it was the weapons systems that truly frightened him. Even at 30% functionality, Starforge's armaments were terrifying, dimensional shear cannons that could tear holes in space itself. Probability bombs that could rewrite the laws of physics in a localized area. Shield systems that didn't just block attacks, but redirected them through higher dimensions to emerge anywhere the pilot chose. This wasn't just a warship. It was a civilization ender. Marcus was working on the shield generators one night when Starforge suddenly spoke with more urgency than usual. "Warning! Gravitational anomaly detected. Analyzing. 3 vessels dropping from hyperspace. Configuration matches hegemony patrol craft." The hegemony was the dominant military force in this sector. 3 species working together to maintain order, and more importantly, maintain their position at the top of the food chain. They didn't like surprises, and they really didn't like unknown technology. "They're heading for the colony," Marcus said, reading the sensor data. "Why would hegemony patrols come here?" "Scanning communication frequencies. Intercepted transmission references investigation of anomalous energy readings from this location. Defensive systems have been detected." Marcus cursed. Starforge's defensive field must have triggered some kind of sensor. The hegemony was coming to investigate, and they weren't known for asking questions politely. "Can you hide? Go dormant again?" "Negative. Power systems cannot be fully shut down without causing cascade failure. Current repairs too extensive. Estimate 72 hours minimum to safely enter dormancy." 3 hegemony patrol craft would be here in less than an hour. Marcus ran through his options. He could try to bluff, claim it was experimental human technology, but the hegemony would want to inspect it, and one scan would reveal the truth. He could run, abandon Starforge, and disappear, but that would mean leaving the most important discovery in human history to be picked apart by aliens who already viewed humanity as inferior. Or, "Starforge, what's your current flight capability?" "Sublight engines at 45% capacity. Hyperdrive non-functional, weapons at 30%, shields at 55%, not recommended for combat engagement." "I'm not planning to fight. Can you fly?" "Affirmative. Though structural integrity is compromised. Recommended maximum velocity." "Doesn't matter. We're leaving." Marcus ran to his office and grabbed his emergency bag. He'd always kept one packed, a habit from his days as a freelance mechanic moving between colonies. He sent a quick message to Sarah saying he had to leave suddenly for a family emergency. She'd be hurt, but she'd be safe. That was what mattered. He returned to Starforge and made his way to the bridge. The command chair recognized him immediately, interfaces sliding out to connect with his neural implants. It was more intensive than the navigation chair had been. This wasn't just one system, but all of them, feeding information directly into his brain. "Launch sequence initiated," Starforge announced. "Warning, launching without proper clearance will trigger colonial defense grid." "They're going to have bigger problems in about 40 minutes, Marcus said. "Do it!" The ship shuddered. Throughout its hull, systems that had slept for eons sparked to life. The damaged sections screamed protests that Marcus felt in his bones, but Starforge held together. The shop's roof, never designed to open, was casually pushed aside by force fields. Starforge rose into the night sky of New Brisbane, a dark shape blotting out stars. It shouldn't have been able to fly. By every law of aerodynamics, the damaged, twisted hull should have torn itself apart. But architect engineering operated by different rules. Where physics said no, Starforge simply disagreed. Alarms blared across the colony. Defense satellites swiveled to track the unknown vessel rising from the surface. But their targeting systems, designed to lock onto known ship configurations, couldn't quite seem to focus on Starforge. The ship existed partially in other dimensions, its true shape incomprehensible to standard sensors. "Incoming transmission from Colonial Defense," Starforge reported. "Ignore it. Plot a course out of the system. Somewhere with lots of asteroids where we can hide and finish repairs. The Jakara belt is 7.3 light-years distant. Dense asteroid field with minimal traffic. Estimated travel time at current engine capacity, 16 days. "Do it!" Starforge accelerated, pushing through New Brisbane's atmosphere like it was tissue paper. Behind them, the colony's defenses fired warning shots, plasma bolts that dispersed harmlessly against shields designed to withstand weapons that could crack planets. As they reached the edge of the system, sensors showed the hegemony patrol craft changing course to intercept. They were faster than Starforge in its damaged state. They would catch up within hours. Options? Marcus asked. Combat not recommended. Probability of success, 12%. Alternative, activate partial hyperdrive. Risk of catastrophic failure, 34%. Marcus weighed the odds, a 1 in 3 chance of the ship tearing itself apart in hyperspace versus certain capture by the hegemony. It wasn't really a choice. Prepare for hyperspace jump. Warning, hyperdrive operating at 23% capacity. Jump calculations may be inaccurate. Destination uncertain. Anywhere is better than here. Engage. Space twisted around Starforge. The damaged hyperdrive screamed as it tried to punch a hole through reality with a third of its projectors offline. Marcus felt the ship's pain as if it were his own, felt reality bend and stretch in ways that made his human brain want to shut down in self-defense. Then they were through, tumbling in the strange non-space of hyperspace. The ride was rough, nothing like the smooth translations modern ships achieved. Starforge bucked and shuddered, its damaged systems struggling to maintain the bubble of reality that kept them from dissolving into the quantum foam. Marcus held on, pouring his will through the neural link, lending his human stubbornness to the ship's failing systems. He didn't understand the mathematics of hyperspace, couldn't grasp the 11-dimensional calculations required for navigation, but he understood determination. He understood refusing to give up. Together, human and ship fought their way through hyperspace, aiming for anywhere but where they'd been. The emergence from hyperspace was violent. Starforge tumbled out of the quantum foam like a stone skipping across water, reality reasserting itself with crushing force. Warning alarms screamed throughout the bridge as Marcus fought to maintain consciousness. His neural link with the ship transmitted every damaged system's agony directly into his brain. "Status report," he gasped when the universe finally stopped spinning. "Hyperdrive offline, multiple hull breaches, primary power coupling severed, operating on emergency reserves." Starforge's voice sounded strained, if an AI could feel strain. "Location unknown. Star charts do not match any recorded system." Marcus forced himself to focus on the sensor readings. They had emerged in a sparse system with a dying red giant and a few barren rocks. No planets, no stations, no sign of civilization. Perfect. "How long on emergency power?" "At current consumption, 72 hours. Recommend immediate shutdown of non-essential systems." Marcus unbuckled from the command chair, his legs shaky. The neural link had taken more out of him than he'd expected. He made his way to engineering, where the damage was worse than the report suggested. The primary power coupling hadn't just severed, it had vaporized, leaving a gap in the ship's power distribution network. For the first time since finding Starforge, Marcus felt despair creeping in. They were lost in uncharted space, with failing power and no way to call for help. Even if he wanted to return to human space, the hyperdrive was beyond repair without a proper shipyard. "I'm sorry," he said to the ship. "I pushed too hard. Should have stayed and faced the hegemony." "Negative," Starforge replied. "Analysis indicates 94% probability of confiscation and dismantling if captured. Current situation, while critical, maintains possibility of survival and repair." Marcus laughed bitterly. "With what? I need materials I can't synthesize. I need parts I can't fabricate. I need—" He stopped. In the corner of the engineering bay, a panel he'd never seen before was glowing softly. As he approached, it opened, revealing a small chamber containing what looked like a metallic seed. "Emergency architect protocol detected," Starforge announced. "Genesis Module 7 available. Warning! Activation will consume remaining power reserves." "What's a Genesis module?" "Self-replicating repair system, designed for critical failures in deep space." Module will consume available matter and energy to reconstruct damaged systems. Time to full repair, estimated 72 hours. But you said we only have 72 hours of power. Correct. Module must be deployed to external matter source within 24 hours to maintain viability. Marcus studied the sensor readings again. The system's asteroid belt was sparse but present. Iron, nickel, trace amounts of rare elements. Not ideal, but possibly enough. Can you make it to that asteroid cluster? Calculating, yes, with 15% power reserve remaining. It took 18 precious hours to reach the asteroids. Marcus spent the time preparing, studying everything Starforge could teach him about the Genesis module. It was technology beyond anything he could fully understand, a piece of architect engineering that bordered on magic. The module would literally grow repairs, spreading across damaged systems like beneficial cancer, rebuilding according to the original specifications stored in its crystalline matrix. They selected a nickel-iron asteroid about 2 kilometers across. Marcus suited up in Starforge's emergency EVA gear, which adjusted itself to his body perfectly. The suit was more like a second skin than the bulky things humans used, providing protection while barely impeding movement. Standing on the asteroid's surface, Marcus held the Genesis module. It was warm in his hands, pulsing with internal light. According to Starforge's instructions, he needed to plant it at the densest concentration of useful minerals. He found a deep crevasse and climbed down, the suit's systems compensating for the asteroid's negligible gravity. At the bottom, his scanner showed rich veins of metal. Perfect. "Deploying module," he announced. The seed sank into the rock like it was water. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the asteroid began to change. Veins of silver spread from the impact point, growing through the rock like a living nervous system. The process accelerated, consuming matter and converting it into useful materials. Marcus scrambled back to Starforge as the asteroid transformed. Within hours, it had become something else entirely. Not rock anymore, but a structure of living metal, reaching out with tendrils toward the damaged ship. "Genesis module has established connection," Starforge reported, beginning repair sequence, entering standby mode to conserve power. The lights dimmed to almost nothing. Life support dropped to minimal levels. Marcus settled into the command chair to wait, watching through the viewport as silver vines grew across Starforge's hull. They found every breach, every damaged system, every broken connection. Where they touched, metal flowed like water, assuming new configurations. Marcus dozed fitfully, waking periodically to check progress. The Genesis module was thorough, not just repairing but improving. Systems came online showing efficiency ratings beyond their original specifications. The hull didn't just seal, it became stronger, incorporating new alloys the module synthesized from the asteroid's resources. After 60 hours, Marcus woke to find the bridge fully illuminated. Every console showed green status lights. The air smelled fresh and clean, with that distinctive ozone scent. "Repairs complete," Starforge announced. And there was something different in its voice. Stronger, more present. "All systems optimal, hyperdrive fully functional, weapons at 100% capacity, shields upgraded to Mark 7 specifications." Mark 7? Marcus stood, stretching cramped muscles. "I thought you were Mark 5. Genesis module incorporated improvements from its database. This unit has been upgraded to late war architect standard." Marcus felt a chill. Late war meant the height of whatever conflict had destroyed the architects. Starforge wasn't just repaired. It was now one of the most advanced warships ever built. "Plot a course back to human space. Stay clear of New Brisbane and Hegemony patrols." Destination? Marcus thought about it. He couldn't go home. The Hegemony would be watching. But humanity needed to know about Starforge, about their connection to the architects. There was only one place to go. Earth. But keep us in stealth mode. I need to contact the right people without triggering a panic. The journey took 3 weeks, using indirect routes and staying in the shadow of larger traffic patterns. Starforge's upgraded systems made them effectively invisible to standard sensors. They could have been a ghost ship for all anyone could detect them. Marcus used the time to explore Starforge's upgraded systems. The databases were incredible, containing not just technical specifications but history, philosophy, art. The architects hadn't been a single species, but a collective, multiple races working together in harmony. They had built wonders, seeded life on dead worlds, created beauty for its own sake. And then something had come from outside the galaxy, something that consumed civilizations, that turned their own technology against them. The war had lasted millennia, and in the end, both sides had lost. The enemy was destroyed, but so were the architects, leaving only their artifacts scattered across the galaxy. But they had also left a contingency. Hidden in their technology was a simple protocol. If a species ever arose that matched their specific criteria, that species would inherit everything: the ability to interface with architect technology, to understand it, to become the new guardians of the galaxy. Humanity matched those criteria perfectly, not because of superior strength or intelligence, but because of something more fundamental: curiosity, stubbornness, the ability to see potential where others saw junk, the willingness to risk everything on a feeling that something was important. As they approached Earth, carefully avoiding the defense grids and patrol routes, Marcus composed his message. He couldn't broadcast it. That would give away their position. But Starforge had other options. Can you deliver a message directly to Earth's military command without revealing our location? Affirmative. Quantum entanglement communication available, undetectable and untraceable. Marcus recorded everything: the auction, the discovery, Starforge's nature and capabilities. He included sensor logs, technical data, and most importantly, the revelation about humanity's compatibility with architect technology. He ended with coordinates for a meeting, far from any populated system. The response came within hours. A single ship, Earth's newest diplomatic vessel, arrived at the coordinates. Marcus watched nervously as it approached, but Starforge remained calm. No weapons charged. Diplomatic protocols active. They are requesting permission to dock. Grant it. The airlock cycled, and 3 humans entered Starforge. Marcus recognized Admiral Chen, no relation despite the shared surname, head of Earth's Deep Space Command. With her were Dr. Sarah Okafor, Earth's leading xenotechnology expert, and Minister James Wright from the Colonial Affairs Office. Their expressions as they stepped onto Starforge's bridge were worth the weeks of fear and uncertainty. Awe, wonder, and a dawning understanding of what this meant. Mr. Chen, Admiral Chen said formally, I believe you've been shopping at alien auctions. Marcus managed a tired smile. Found a bargain, bit of a fixer-upper, but she cleaned up nice. Dr. Okafor was already at one of the science stations, her hands dancing over controls that responded to her touch. This is incredible. The theoretical implications alone. We're looking at technology centuries ahead of anything in the known galaxy. Not centuries, Marcus corrected. Millions of years. And there's more. He showed them everything. The databases, the history, the weapon systems that could crack moons. But most importantly, he showed them the medical bay and the fabrication systems. Technology that could end disease, create abundance, lift humanity to heights they'd never imagined. The hegemony won't like this, Minister Wright said quietly. They maintain power by controlling technology, keeping younger races dependent. When they learn humans can use architect systems. They'll try to stop us, Admiral Chen finished. But with this ship and others like it, if we can find them, we'll be ready. It's not about fighting, Marcus said. The architects weren't conquerors. They were builders, creators. That's what they're passing on to us, the ability to make things better. Over the following months, everything changed. Earth's government worked in secret, using Starforge's fabrication systems to upgrade human technology. Medical breakthroughs eliminated diseases that had plagued humanity for millennia. New alloys made human ships faster and stronger. Energy systems based on architect principles provided clean, unlimited power, but they were careful. Humanity continued to play the role of newcomers, buying outdated technology from other species, maintaining the facade of primitive development. All while searching for more architect artifacts. They found them, in junkyards, in forgotten corners of ancient stations, dismissed as worthless relics. Each one responded to human touch, awakening from eons of slumber. A terraforming station that could transform dead worlds in months instead of centuries. A defensive platform that could shield entire solar systems. A library complex containing the compiled knowledge of 1,000 dead civilizations. The hegemony grew suspicious. Reports filtered in of humans buying worthless junk across the galaxy. Of human colonies showing unexpected prosperity. Of human ships somehow avoiding pirates and raiders with uncanny success. The confrontation came 2 years after Marcus's discovery. A hegemony fleet, 50 ships strong, arrived at Earth demanding inspections, claiming reports of illegal technology. They expected humanity to roll over, to beg forgiveness, to accept whatever punishment the hegemony deemed appropriate. Instead, they found Earth defended by a fleet of architect ships, each one awakened and repaired by human hands. Starforge led them with Marcus at the helm, his connection to the ship now so deep they moved as one thought. "Stand down," the hegemony commander broadcast. "You are in violation of Galactic Treaty 779. Surrender this illegal technology immediately." "No," Marcus replied simply. "This technology isn't illegal. It was left for us, specifically for humanity, by its creators. We're not stealing it. We're inheriting it. Impossible. Humans are primitive. You could never understand architect systems." Marcus smiled. "That's where you're wrong. We don't understand it because we're advanced. We understand it because we're curious. Because when everyone else saw worthless junk, we saw potential." The architects didn't leave their legacy to the strongest or the smartest. They left it to the species that would look at a broken thing and say, "I can fix that." The hegemony fleet powered weapons. 50 ships against Earth's 12 salvaged architect vessels. By conventional wisdom, it wasn't even a fight. But conventional wisdom didn't account for architect technology operated by human will. Shields that turned energy weapons into harmless light shows. Weapons that fired not plasma or missiles, but focused probability, making it increasingly unlikely that enemy ships would continue to function. Drives that stepped outside normal space, allowing instantaneous repositioning. The battle lasted less than 10 minutes. No lives were lost. Architect weapons at their lowest settings simply disabled enemy ships. The hegemony fleet floated helpless, their crews unharmed but faced with the undeniable reality that the galaxy's power structure had just changed. "We don't want to rule," Marcus broadcast to the disabled fleet, and through them to the entire galaxy. "We don't want to conquer, but we won't be held back anymore. Humanity has inherited the architect's legacy, and we intend to use it as they would have. To build, to create, to make the galaxy better for everyone." "The Hegemony Council will never accept this," the enemy commander replied. "Then the council will fall," Marcus said simply. "Not because we'll destroy it, but because it's obsolete. Why would species pay for technology when humanity will share it freely? Why would they accept oppression when there's an alternative?" And that's what they did. Over the following years, humanity spread across the galaxy not as conquerors, but as mechanics, engineers, healers. They found more architect technology and awakened it. They shared medical advances that saved billions of lives. They built trade stations that connected distant systems. They terraformed dead worlds and gave them to species that needed new homes. The hegemony tried to stop them, but their power was based on scarcity and control. Against abundance freely given, they had no defense. Member species began to defect, choosing cooperation over domination. Within a decade, the hegemony existed only in history books. Marcus continued to fly Starforge, now accompanied by a fleet of similar vessels. He became humanity's first void walker, exploring the spaces between galaxies, searching for more architect mysteries. But he never forgot that it all started with a piece of worthless junk at a salvage auction. Years later, speaking at the dedication of the Architect Memorial on Earth, Marcus addressed a crowd that included dozens of species, all working together as the architects once had. "They told me I wasted 50 credits on worthless scrap," he said. "They laughed at the primitive human who didn't know any better. But that's the thing about humans. We see worth where others see waste. We fix what others throw away. And sometimes what looks like junk to the rest of the galaxy turns out to be the key to the future." He paused, looking up at Starforge hovering protectively overhead, its hull gleaming with health and power. The architects knew that. They didn't leave their legacy in grand temples or obvious monuments. They hid it in broken things, waiting for someone who wouldn't give up, who would see the potential beneath the damage. They were waiting for humanity. And we won't let them down. The crowd erupted in cheers, a harmony of different species united in hope. Above them, Starforge pulsed with light, a reminder that even the most worthless-looking things could change the fate of the galaxy. All it took was the right hands to fix them. Human hands.